Hey everybody, I'm Greg Soul and welcome to another CIQ tutorial. Today I'm going to be going through, troubleshooting a playbook. So this is something I wanted to do in my last one, but unfortunately I didn't actually run into any problems. I probably kept the playbook too simple. So what I did is I wrote I guess maybe a challenge playbook, so we're going to call it, where I have a whole bunch of errors in there. And I would say, hey, if you want to give it a go first, before you actually watch this video, go ahead and pause it and run Playbook 1 from my troubleshooting repository. So it's got a whole bunch of errors in there. Throw it against one of your hosts and see if you can sort through all of them. If not, you can just watch along here. I'm going to show you how I run into various errors. Obviously, I know the fix already, so it's kind of a cheat. But I'll show you the error messages that I get, kind of follow through the process of me troubleshooting, aka sort of building, and what I do when I run into things. So let's start at the start by connecting over here to my playbook. So I have playbook 1. So I have cloned this repository. I'm going to go to the file menu here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to copy and I'm going to paste that playbook. So I'm going to just make a quick copy of it. I'm going to rename this one to playbook 1-Greg. So that's going to be me making changes on this individual playbook right here. So now that I've done that, I'll come in here. I will commit it. I'll sync it into my repository, and then I will add said repository into my Ascender here. So I'm going to go into my project section. I'm going to click add. I'm going to call this Playbook Troubleshooting. Not troubleshooting. I am from Texas, but I'm going to say troubleshooting. I'm going to paste in the URL there. I'm going to say update revision on launch. And what that does is it means every time I'm going to run a piece of automation that uses this project, it's going to go ahead and do a refresh. If you're doing this in production, this will slow it down by a few seconds, right? So maybe not the worst, but honestly, I'm super impatient, so I usually leave that off. But I'm going to be developing, so I'm going to be doing a lot of iterations really quickly. So it makes sense for me to just go ahead and update revision on launch. I mean, I could not do it, but I would have to come into the project section every time and click this sync button every time I made an update. So this just kind of speeds up the process a little bit for me. So I've got that in there. I've already got an inventory. I'm just going to use my generic one. I've already got credentials. I'm going to now create a job template really fast. I'm going to say add job template, and I'll call this Playbook Troubleshooting 1, because I plan on doing maybe a series of these. So why not start with 1? This repository is where I'm going to keep all that good stuff. So my inventory, type in gen for my generic inventory. I'll select that project. It should be the troubleshooting one we just created, Playbook Troubleshooting. There it is. I'm going to select a playbook in here, and it's going to be Playbook 1-Greg, right? Because this is the one I'm actually making changes to. I'm going to leave the Playbook 1 in its pristine broken state. It's weird to call it pristine, but in its existing state, I'm going to leave it there. Credentials, I should be able to use, let's say, for example, I'll use my demo credentials in there. That should be everything I need. So I should be able to click save, and let's launch and see what happens. Now, throughout the course of this, I don't want you to have to sit and be bored while I do all of these things. So I'm going to do a little bit of editing to cut out the wait time in between these runs. All right, so this says the job has failed and there's no output, but I bet you if I click details and then back over to output, I do indeed have some output. So we're unable to read either as JSON nor YAML. So normally when you see that message, that means you've really messed up the file to such an extent that it can't really read, right? So it's saying line 1, column 1. Let's take a look at line 1, column 1 here. Line 1, column 1. Now, typically a YAML file is going to start with 3 dashes. So in this one, and watch the syntax highlighting on this YAML file. So VS Code, which is Visual Studio Code, it's free IDE from Microsoft. You can get in there and it recognizes YAML file. And so it'll do syntax highlighting. So when I actually fix this from 4 dashes to a YAML file should start with 3 dashes, you should see the syntax highlighting change. Everything looks very different. So I'm going to save that, and then I will commit to my repository. So that was line 1, column 1. Commit. Now I should come back over here, and if I want to rerun the job, so When you're in the job template section and you fire off a job, it immediately takes you over to the job section and just shows you the output of that job. And if I'm in here, I can click the rocket ship and I can say all, so run against or rerun using all the exact same settings against all the same hosts. So if I had, say, maybe extra variables that I passed in or something like that, it'll use those exact same ones and rerun it again. So it's just kind of a little time save. So we've got our failed output again. We're going to see this a lot. We're going to see a lot of red before we actually see the green. So click details and then output again. Line 1, error 1. Now let's see what else we have here. Fending line. Line 2, column 7, maybe elsewhere in our playbook. Job for learning troubleshooting here. Let's take a look. Oh, common error, right? This is actually user error. So I did commit the change, but I forgot to synchronize the change, right? Committing the change just saves it in the local repository on my machine. Sync means actually push that up to my repository. So now that I have synchronized it, let's rerun. So essentially, I just reran the exact same playbook again. All right, we have our failed again, detailed output. Let's see, did we see something different? We did, right? So now it says there appears to be, did not find expected key, appears to be line 11, column 5, and it's showing us here in display variable info. So if I pop over here, line 11, that's right here. Now notice the syntax highlighting here under tasks. See where it says name, right? And then the register, and they're both kind of this, I don't know, what is that, kind of a light purple sort of color. And over here, everything's blue. That's because we have our indentation wrong. So I could do one of two things. I could either grab this task and I can move it to the left, or I can grab this task and move it to the right. So I'll tell you what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna highlight all three of those and I'm gonna hit Control and the right bracket, and it's going to move all that to the right. Now you see, as soon as I did that, the syntax highlighting changed for these right here, right? So we did a little bit of a fix there. I'm going to Control S to save that. I'll put some comment in here. I'll wait for it to commit, then I will synchronize those changes. Now let me come over here and rerun the job, and let's see what we get next time. All right, failed, no output, details output. Let's see what we got. Conflicting action statements. Blah, blah, blah. The error appears to be line 11, column 7, but it may be elsewhere depending on the syntax. So conflicting action statements. So it's saying conflicting between debug and message. So action statements. Action, that's generally going to be what it's referring to as a task. Like I don't know which task to actually run here. So if you take a look at these two columns, you see I have Ansible.builtin.debug, which is the module I'm trying to call, and the message is a parameter for the module. And you see I accidentally have them on the same line. So what I need to do is I need to grab this line and I need to shift it to the right one position, which is really going to be 2 spaces. In YAML files, generally, kind of the good practice, I'm not going to say best practice, the good practice is going to be 2 spaces, right? So it's going to be indented in. So if a parameter is specific to a module, it's going to be indented into the right of it, right? So that's really saying, hey, this module has precedence, jump over a little bit, and then here are all the parameters associated with it. So now we've got that situated. It's not going to be confused on which one of these is actually the module I'm trying to call. So let me commit that. Let me sync my changes, and I'll come back over here, fire it off again, and let's see what we end up with. All right, another failed output. Let's click on details, go back to output again. What do we have this time? Line 11, column 7. Says couldn't resolve module/action. So I immediately see what it is. I am bad at grammar sometimes, and so Ansible.builtin.dedug instead of debug, right? So if it ever says, hey, I can't find a module name, 9 times out of 10, I've just misspelled it. The other 10% of time, it's because I'm using an execution environment that doesn't have that collection in there, or if you're using just standard command line Ansible, maybe you don't have that collection installed. So double check first, did I actually spell the collection name or the module name right? And is the collection installed? So this one is built in, which means yes, it is there. We just have to make sure it's spelled correctly. So Ansible.builtin.debug. Built-in, I misspell that one a lot too, for whatever reason. So save that, commit, sync, And now I will fire this off yet again. All right, so let's take a look at the output. There was some success, so at least it didn't error out when it ran this time, but it says, could not match supplied host pattern, ignoring test host 1. That means in my inventory, I probably don't have a test host 1. Now here's a little trick. So I'm going to open a new tab on the inventory right there so I can pull it up. I'll find my generic inventory. So sometimes you can go into the host section, or I could be calling a group, right? So if I'm calling a group, I tend to run into fewer errors. So if you can put your things into groups and just put the group name at the top of your playbook in the host section, oftentimes you'll kind of remove some errors there. But in this instance, I'm calling an individual host. Well, test host 1, I think is what it was called, right? Yeah, test host 1, that doesn't exist in here. But I have run into before where a host does 100% exist in here, but it keeps giving me that, hey, I'm not matching anything, I'm not finding anything. Well, if you go in your inventory, check over here whether it's enabled or not. So even if a host is in here, so say, for example, this host44.example.com, if I call it, but it's turned off, then a playbook isn't going to be able to follow it. Essentially, that invalidates it in the inventory. It's essentially a comment at that point. So your playbook will never actually find it. So if you 100% know that thing is there, just check to make sure that it's actually enabled. So I've seen that before where something came in disabled for whatever reason. So in this instance, I could go with a group, but you know what? I'm just going to run it against this Greg Rocky 9 host. So I'm going to copy that name and I'm going to put that in my playbook. So right here, I will put it in the playbook. I could also change the host section to all and then set the limit option in the job template to be Greg Rocky 9. So the limit section really allows you to narrow down even more specifically what you want to operate against. So it's kind of a little fudge there. So if all of your playbooks, you just wanted to have them run against all, and then you use the limit, you could do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Put my commit and my sync. I will launch this. And let's see what it comes up with this time. Now we've got a failure this time. So I'm going to go back to my output. So it was able to actually find it, but now it's saying failed to connect to the host via SSH. So I'm getting permission denied. So I'm not able to actually log in. So let me double check my credentials again. So if I go to the details section, I can just click on the job template name there and it takes me right in. I will click on edit. Sure enough, I accidentally used the demo credentials. What a dum-dum. I will use my GSOL credentials and I will save that job template and I'll give it a launch. All right, we've got another error. What do we have here? Invalid variable name in register specified for sudoers collect. So what makes the variable name invalid? sudoers-collect. So I'm going to take a look at that one right here. So they're referring to this section right here for the collect sudoers file. So really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just do a shell command, which means I'm going to just fire something off as if I'm right on the shell, like I'm SSH'd in. I'm just going to issue a command. I'm going to cat out the sudoers file. Well, the register command says, hey, save all of this output to a variable and name it sudoers-collect. The only problem here is Ansible doesn't allow you to do dashes in variable names. Kind of the only special symbol you can do is an underscore. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to an underscore. That was something that I ran into problems with early on myself. All right, let me fire this off and let's see what the results are. All right, we've got another error. Let's take a look at it. So I was able to authenticate. The variable name is now correct in the task, but I am getting change true. Permission denied on the sudoers file, right? Cat, etc. sudoers. That's because I am just a standard user in there and I need to actually escalate privileges to access this. So I need to use the sudo command. Well, in Ansible, in a playbook, the way you actually tell it to escalate privileges is I can use the become option. So here I can say become true. And what that will essentially do is for that credential, it will look at its privilege escalation. So if it's a Windows box on that privilege escalation, I would say like run as administrator. In here, I'm doing sudo. So it will do sudo before my command, and it will operate in that become fashion. Now, you can see I've added it to just the individual task right here. And so there's a concept of least privilege access, right? I only want to elevate those privileges when I absolutely need to. And in this playbook, that's the only command that really needs privilege escalation. So a lot of times my playbooks, a whole bunch of commands require that privilege escalation. And what I can do is I can, up here at the top, I can put become : true at the top, and that means it's going to be inherited by all the tasks associated with it. So everything will be running as sudo, right? It's going to do escalated privileges. And then that's the case. If a whole bunch of things need it, I can also do on individual tasks that don't need it. Say I have 10 that do and one that doesn't. On that one that doesn't, I could say become : false, and it'll just turn it off for that one individual, right? So there's a little bit more efficiency in that. I think a lot of people prefer to do become true on the individual ones they want because it's kind of easier to remember and you don't accidentally throw extra commands in there and have them automatically assume those additional privileges. So we have added that change, we've committed it, let's fire it off and see if it's actually able to parse that file now. All right, so it's saying successful, but let's take a look at the output. We have run it, it has successfully escalated privileges, it's gathered all the information, and it is displaying it to screen. So it looks like we have reached success. So at this point, you can say, hey, you know what? This playbook actually ran, and it gave me all the information I wanted. I'm not quite going to stop there. I'm going to change 2 more things. These are not necessarily requirements. These are just like pet peeves of mine. So whenever I'm doing collection of information on a shell command, the shell command always assumes there's a change. Right? So if I take a look at the output here, it's going to show me everything that I had pulled out of that file, but in here it says changed true. So it assumes since I ran that shell command and then things came back, I actually made a change. Whereas here, I'm really just gathering information. So what I'm going to do in my playbook is I can add a task level parameter that applies to the task itself. And I'm going to say changed when false. So essentially here, I'm just saying it's never going to show changed. Right? So for this command, never show changed on it, right? And that's going to kind of speak to the idempotent nature. The idempotency means you can run a command over and over. It's only going to make an actual change on the system when it needs to. Well, if it says change when it didn't actually need to, that's going to give kind of some false positive information. So I usually like to change those. If it really is just information gathering, there is absolutely no chance it can make a change. Go ahead and just adjust that change when condition. Now I could add additional parameters in there because it is a conditional like any other. So I could look at the registered output, I could look at the contents and look for something very specific inside a condition which would, indicate to me, oh, I actually did make a change on this. In this case, it never will. So I'm just going to say change when false. The other thing I'm going to do is on the debug module here, it's got a couple of options that you can actually use. So I'm going to highlight all of that. I'm going to hit Control // which comments it out. I'm going to paste in a copy right there. And you can either do MSG for message, and it allows you, as you can see here, I just crafted a regular text message, or I can do something like var. And so var will allow me to specify a specific variable, and it will spit out the contents of said variable. Now, if you take a look at this right here, I am getting rid of the double quotes and the double curly braces. And really, in this above output, this is another kind of gotcha. So while technically this command ran, that format is bad. It really should have been the double quotes around the entirety of the message, and then any extra variables I need in there, you just put the double curly braces. You don't actually have to do anything else with the double quotes. But I digress. Down here, if you're actually using the var option, you don't have to use any curly braces. You don't have to use any quotes. It'll actually just spit out the contents of a variable. So here I'm doing sudoers_collect .std outlines, and so that's going to spit out that very specific portion of it. So the std lines portions can all get out. If I got rid of .std outlines, it would really just show me every bit of the output. So it'll show me the change condition, it'll show me std out, std outlines, all that good stuff. But here, I really just want to see lines. So I am going to commit, synchronize that, and let's fire it off, and then make sure I didn't mess anything up but also let's see how the output has changed. All right, success. Let's take a look at the output. So again, remember in the previous run, it actually showed change. If I wanted to see that, I could go to the job section, and right here, I could look at the old playbook run, right? So it showed change and all this stuff was jumbled up. Instead, I want to see the output of the newest, and I'm looking for playbook run right there. Troubleshooting 1. So again, it's okay green instead of orange changed or slightly yellow. I guess it depends on your monitor, right? So it's really just showing, hey, I collected the information, but I didn't actually make any changes. And then the var output, see how this is so much more readable. Now it truncates this output, but if I go to the JSON section, it'll actually show it all to me right here, right? So I can scroll through the entirety of the file, and it's a lot easier to look at with the var's formatting. Now I could format it with some special characters in the message section, but you know, why go through all that work when I can just throw var at it? It'll actually show me all of that output. So at this point, if you have done it on your own, I hope you learned a couple of things. If you watched along, hopefully this will help you kind of figure out how to match an error message to, hey, where do I find this to troubleshoot? Maybe show you some caveats, maybe some gotchas that you run into already. I would, at this point, like to say thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, or you would change this or adjust this, or you want to see me do something different, please reach out. I genuinely enjoy feedback, and I'm usually pretty talkative. I like meeting new people, and I like it when people are interested in automation. If you have the want or need for somebody to come in and help you do some of this automation, please feel free to reach out to us. We love helping folks. I love doing this stuff. I love the education piece of it. Absolutely enjoy that. We also can help you build out your automation practice. We can help you build out your clusters, all of your infrastructure. Let us know. We're happy to help. If nothing else, happy automating, happy troubleshooting, and we'll see you next time. Bye.